Hey everyone, it's Diana. Today, we're diving into a creepy crime story. Stick around for the chilling details. How far love can go. A crime based on jealousy or failed manipulation is a common occurrence. But can love really exist where only lies reign? Diana Duve was born in 1988 in Moldova. At the age of 13, she immigrated to the United States to reunite with her mother. A woman had moved there earlier and married an American man, and then helped her daughter to move. At the age of 13, she immigrated to the United States to reunite with her mother. A woman had moved there earlier and married an American man, and then helped her daughter to move. Vero Beach is a small, cozy resort town in sunny Florida with white sandy beaches and the warm Atlantic Ocean. Young Diana did not even speak English at the time, but immediately enrolled in a regular American school, where she studied on an equal footing with other children. Learning the language was easy, and within 2 months she was speaking fluently. A few years later, she was indistinguishable from other Americans. Diane got along well with her stepfather Bill. He was like a second father to her. The young girl also had no problems with friends. She was easy to get along with, outgoing and friendly. After graduating from high school, Diana had no problem choosing her future path. She knew that she wanted to spend her life helping people and entered the medical faculty of the college. In 2011, she graduated as a nurse and had no problems finding a job. Diane worked in the oncology department at Sebastian River Medical Center. She was well-liked at work, and patients thanked her for her care and attention. In 2012, she met 30-year-old Mike Jones at a local bar. At first, they were just friends, and then a romantic relationship began between them, which cannot be called easy. Those close to her denied that they had strong love or real feelings. It seemed that the guy showed interest and sympathy for her, and the girl just accepted his advances. Not much was known about Mike Jones. He worked at a bank in the wealth management department and had graduated from the University of Miami Law School. He was always polite, well-dressed, clean-cut, and from a decent family, so he seemed like a good option for starting a family and living together. For this reason, a few months after they met, the girl moved into his apartment at his request. The relationship turned out to be warm, even happy. They literally did not separate from each other. But gradually, it turned into problems. The girl's friends remembered that she sometimes looked restless when she met with them. It felt like she was trying to hide from Mike, so he wouldn't see her with her friends or even her car. It seemed strange, but Diana didn't give away any details, even though everyone already knew that something was wrong in their relationship. Probably the guy was not allowing her to communicate with her friends. Shortly before the tragic events, Diana had a conflict with her boyfriend. On April 30th, 2014, Mike's neighbor called 911. He reported that Diane and Mike had been arguing behind the wall for about an hour. The boyfriend was yelling loudly, but there was no sign of physical violence. The neighbor was concerned that this conflict could end in physical violence and asked the police to intervene. Officers responded to the call and made contact with the arguing couple. Mike opened the door and reported that the screaming and noise was due to rough sex his girlfriend wanted to try. Diane stood quietly in her pajamas with her eyes downcast. She looked frightened and was crying, which of course the police noticed and didn't believe him. But in front of him, Diana said nothing, but told the patrolman that everything was fine. However, at the end of the conversation, the girl asked them to wait, took her things, said goodbye to the boyfriend, and went with them to the station. Later, Diana told her friend that the boyfriend not only yelled at her that night, but also tried to morally suppress her will for several hours. And when he realized it wasn't working, he grabbed her by the throat and started choking her. The girl was terrified and thought she was dead. The neighbor saved her life by calling 911. Despite the danger of the situation, 26-year-old Diana did not tell all these details in the station. She thought her relationship with her boyfriend was over. He wouldn't bother her anymore, so she shouldn't worry. The police officers persuaded Diana to write a statement to protect her, but the girl refused. Diana didn't want to ruin his life. She moved in with her mother and distanced herself from him, but how wrong she was. Mike, 32, continued to stalk her, texting and demanding to see her as if nothing had happened. On Thursday, June 19, 2014, she was out with friends but left them to meet her boyfriend, Mike Jones. Her friends last saw her when Diana left a bar with her boyfriend at 1:30 a.m. on June 20th. Diana then texted her mother at 1:45 a.m. saying she would not be home. That was the last anyone heard of her. She then stopped contacting her family and friends. As previously known, the girl had a rather tense relationship with her boyfriend, but witnesses reported that they were having a good time that day, communicating and not having any conflicts. They seemed to have reconciled, but after she went missing, some people recalled that she seemed upset with them at some point that night. While she was in contact with her ex, Diana had been in daily contact with her mother, so the mother was immediately concerned when her daughter didn't contact her or answer her phone. The mother's mind was filled with eerie speculation about what might have happened. She contacted her daughter's friends, but they didn't know where she was either. The girl had not returned. Then, on the evening of June 20th, the mother called the police and shared her thoughts with the officers. The police took her statement and became involved on June 21st. First, they tried to locate Diana's cell phone, but it was no use. It was switched off. Then they went to the apartment of her ex-boyfriend, the missing Mike, who was believed to be the last person to spend time with the girl before her disappearance. But no one opened the door for the police. The guy was not home. At the same time, they interviewed all the witnesses, Diana's friends, who were also in the bar that night. But this gave the investigators quite contradictory information. Without exaggeration, they had several different theories as to how the events of that night might have unfolded. That same day, the police obtained a search warrant for the apartment of the missing woman's boyfriend. This required going back to the station and filling out the paperwork. Upon returning, officers found the missing girl's mother and stepfather sitting in a car outside Mike's apartment complex. The mother, Helen Andrews, was distraught. She was crying, ready to kick down the door to the apartment to finally see her daughter. The longer the girl didn't contact her, the more worried her mother became. The woman was sure that Mike had something to do with Diana's disappearance. The police interviewed the woman. She said that at about 1:45 a.m., she received a message from her daughter, which was the last one. The girl wrote, "I'm not coming to spend the night." It was written in Russian, the language they used to communicate. This was very important because Mike did not speak Russian and would not have been able to send this message. After the daughter disappeared, the mother called Mike. The man on the phone tried to convince her that the girl was with him and that she was fine. However, attempts to speak to her in person were unsuccessful. He found an excuse that she was asleep and he wasn't home right now. His words sounded contrived, and the woman didn't believe him. As a result, Alina demanded that her daughter call back as soon as Mike got home because she was very worried and wanted to hear from her. However, instead, the guy stopped contacting her as well. She suspected that Mike was involved and had done something to her daughter. The woman begged the officers for help, and they promised to find her daughter one way or another. The detectives also received photos taken by the friend that night. There were distinct strangulation marks on the missing woman's neck. She sustained these injuries after their argument, which was overheard by a neighbor. A friend tried to persuade Diana to press charges against her boyfriend. However, she refused to testify against him. She asked her boyfriend to help her collect her things, as she thought the relationship was over. She then moved in with her parents, but did not tell them about the incident, and her mother did not even know that her daughter had been assaulted, assuming it was just a disagreement. Still, she was suspicious of the boyfriend, but Mike wouldn't leave the girl alone. Then the harassment began. The ex kept writing to Diana, as if he didn't realize their relationship was over. Just 48 hours after the girl's disappearance, police officers entered her ex-boyfriend's apartment with a search warrant. They expected to find Diana there, but they were unable to find any of her belongings, no clues as to where to look for her. The next step was to find Michael Jones. According to witnesses, the guy showed up at work just 12 hours after Diana stopped contacting him. He withdrew $2,500 in cash from his account and said he felt bad, so he would be gone for a few days. There was no luck finding the guy. No one knew where he was. It looked like Mike was on the run, which meant he had something to hide, and the guy became the prime suspect in Diana Duve's disappearance. Detectives began to investigate his identity further, and suddenly police officers found Mike Jones on a criminal watch list. It turned out that even before he moved to Vero Beach, he had been convicted of aggravated stalking of his ex-girlfriend. Investigators reviewed the case file. His ex-partner contacted police when the hero of the story lived near Fort Lauderdale in 2012. She claimed to have broken up with her boyfriend, but he threatened to kill himself. And when the blackmail didn't work, he attacked his girlfriend. Mike tried to hold her down with a gun. His former girlfriends were able to escape because she was able to call the police. The girl wrote a report about Jones, and he was arrested. However, the guy cooperated with the investigation and pleaded guilty to stalking, concealing circumstances, and threatening to kill. As a result, the real killer received 5 years of probation. This continued into his new relationship with Diane. During this time, Mike was not allowed to leave the Vero Beach area without permission from his parole officer. And Mike still disappeared because the cops couldn't find him. They could have had him in custody for at least one parole violation. For the parents of the missing girl, the news of his criminal record came as a real shock. They had no idea that their daughter was involved with a criminal, a potential murderer, who had attacked and threatened the ex-girlfriend and Diana. Meanwhile, the detectives focused all their attention on Mike. It was obvious that he knew much more than he had told the missing girl's mother over the phone. However, the police were unable to contact him either, so law enforcement officials began an extensive analysis and tracking of Mike's cell phone signals. In addition, Mike's and Diana's vehicles were put on a wanted list. After analyzing cell tower signals, the last ping from his phone was found 25 minutes from Vero Beach in the Fort Pierce area. Patrols were dispatched to the area to track the vehicles of the two missing individuals. Troopers were interested in both Mike's gold Honda and the girl's black Nissan. That evening, the suspect's vehicle was found in the parking lot of the Hampton Inn Hotel closest to the tower. Police discovered that the boyfriend had checked into the room just 24 hours after his girlfriend's disappearance. At the same time, he was careful not to give himself away. He paid cash at the front desk for the next 2 nights and was instructed not to tell anyone he was here. Mike also forbade phone calls to his room and disconnected the phone altogether. When the police responded to the call, they thought they might find Diana alive in a hotel room with her kidnapper Mike, still hoping that the girl was still alive. After obtaining a key to the room from the front desk, the officers entered the room, much to the fugitive's surprise. He immediately reported that he had no idea where his ex-girlfriend was. The detectives insisted that he provide all the necessary information he had. But the guy kept denying everything because nothing could be found out. Mike had to be arrested for violating his parole. However, detectives were never able to locate the girl or even her car. But it was found that during his absence, the suspect constantly used a disposable phone, which is almost impossible to trace. The investigation continued and detectives found out where the burner phone was purchased. It was a Walmart store. They requested the store's surveillance footage and studied it in an effort to locate Mike, Diane, or their vehicles. Despite the poor quality of the footage, they were able to identify a car that resembled the missing person's vehicle. This footage was taken just before Diana was reported missing. It shows Mike getting out of the car, buying something at a store, and then driving away. Diane was nowhere to be seen, giving the police no leads, but they were alerted to the need for a more thorough analysis of the phone calls. It turned out that the guy sometimes used his main phone as well. He'd turn it on briefly and then turn it off again. One of the pings was picked up in the Melbourne area, about an hour's drive from where the fugitive was hiding. Investigators alerted local police to check the location. The Melbourne police joined the search for the missing vehicle. This yielded results. Literally half an hour later, Diane's car was found in the parking lot of the Florida Public Mall. Upon hearing the news, investigators immediately went to the location. In June 2014, just 3 days after Diana Duve's disappearance, police officers arriving at the scene found her body in her own car. The body had been hidden in the trunk, and the case was reclassified from disappearance to homicide. The autopsy revealed that the cause of death was strangulation. In addition, the girl had suffered blunt force trauma to the head and had been severely beaten prior to her death. It was obvious that Mike was the one who brought her here, as he was driving the girl's car. He was caught on surveillance camera driving her car. His cell phone was also pinging in the area. A review of his calls revealed that the only time he used his cell phone to communicate in the area was to hail a cab. At approximately 8 a.m., he called for a vehicle and was picked up from the parking lot. The taxi driver was found and questioned. He remembered Michael and pointed to his picture in a pile of other photos. According to the driver, Mike was wearing a red hooded sweatshirt. He sat in the passenger seat and talked for a while. According to his story, he had come here with his friend, but they had a falling out, so he was forced to leave alone. Just 2 days after the body was discovered, police had enough evidence to charge Mike Jones, who was already behind bars, with Diana's first-degree murder. However, he did not admit his guilt, so the investigation had to prove it. When the police began to analyze the personality of the criminal, they realized that he did not fit the description of a typical criminal element. He was educated, intelligent, had a good job at a bank, and was well respected in the community. Many people refused to believe he was capable of murder. The guy was a regular at charity events around town. Surprisingly, he was even an activist in an organization dedicated to fighting domestic violence, where he also proved himself. His friends and colleagues agreed that he was one of the most honest and decent people they had ever met. Those interviewed said they trusted him as much as they trusted their own family members. The management of the banks where he worked considered him one of their best employees and most important team members. Numerous thank you letters were found at work, praising his hard work. Since joining the bank, Mike has attracted many partners with whom multi-million-dollar deals have been made, and he is naturally well respected within the organization. However, all of his merits did not erase the fact that he was a criminal serving a suspended sentence. This guy was a skilled manipulator because he could deceive not only ordinary people, but also the management of the bank, whose security service carefully monitored the fate of its employees. And they did not even know about Mike's past conviction. But the more the police uncovered the man's past, the more it became clear that it was shrouded in mystery. People told different stories about him, and all of them were questionable. Some said he was a former baseball player. Some said he was an adopted child from a wealthy family. Some said he had a fortune and grew up in the family of former US President Ronald Reagan. That's why he has a luxury penthouse and a Porsche, even though he drove a Honda for 10 years. During the investigation, Mike's former girlfriend was identified and detectives talked to her, and the police traced a clear pattern of behavior from the suspect. At first, he appeared on the doorstep like a prince on a white horse, demonstrating his best human qualities. Girls loved him. They were happy to have a relationship with such a promising guy. But gradually, he became terribly possessive and jealous, began to control his partner's every move. He dictated conditions, how and with whom to meet, communicate, monitored correspondence on the phone. There were several girls he manipulated and kept for a long time. He was not only a skilled manipulator, but also a rather cruel person and a pathological liar. But most of the girls were lucky. They did not face physical violence. He was able to break up with his boyfriend without such harsh consequences. Mike had lied about being poor since he entered college. In reality, he was a rather spoiled child of wealthy parents. He began to lie about his past, the most after his parents refused to continue sponsoring their son. He tried to manipulate them, but to no avail. During his studies, he lied about his health and told his classmates that he was fighting cancer, which made everyone feel sorry for him. But the medical evidence could not be found. The prosecution had to decide whether to fight for the death penalty or settle for life imprisonment. There were no discussions with the mother of the deceased. The first option was much more difficult. Even one juror's disagreement with the verdict could have completely sabotaged the trial. Moreover, such cases can drag on for years. But Diana's mother insisted that the perpetrator must die. The woman was unwilling to budge, so the prosecutor announced his intention to seek the death penalty. The murder trial began in November 2019. The prosecution described the relationship between Mike and Diana as toxic. On his part, it was an attempt at brutal domination that lasted about 6 months. The extreme point was the attack on the girl. Clear evidence of his aggressive behavior was provided by the girlfriend's photographs of him with marks on his neck. Prosecutors were unable to determine exactly what the couple talked about that fateful night, as they spent time together at the bar. However, the girl's friend claimed that she and Jones had completely broken off their relationship that night, but had agreed to remain friends. Besides, she was going to take a little trip after that to visit her boyfriend in another town out west. Probably she could have told Mike about it, and that could have drawn his wrath and condemned herself to death. Numerous injuries and bruises were found on the victim's body, which spoke of the severe physical impact the killer had inflicted. According to the prosecution, the man took the girl to his house and beat her severely. After that, he realized that if she was released, she would definitely go to the police, and this would completely destroy the perfect world he had created based on his lies. He would be locked up for a long time, so he couldn't let her get away. The guy killed his girlfriend by strangling her. Characteristic handprints were found on the victim's neck. Afterwards, Jones threw her in the trunk of his own car and drove her out of town, from where he took a cab and hid in a hotel. Fortunately, he left clues that helped track him down and solve the case. The medical examiner was forced to admit that he could not determine the exact time of death. The body had time to decompose in the heat, which made the process difficult. However, upon closer inspection of Mike's property, small but distinct traces of blood were found in his garage. They were located at the exact spot where the roll-up door falls to the ground. It said that he loaded her body into the vehicle while on the property of his home. The defense argued that the prosecution could not accurately characterize what happened at Mike's house. But with that in mind, it is unwarranted to call the murder premeditated. Therefore, the crime should be considered as an accident. The defense also had strong arguments for leniency, such as the treatment of the defendant by his neighbors, friends, and acquaintances, and his high status at work. Testimony at the trial was heard within 7 days. The jury then retired for deliberations to reach a final verdict. Amazingly, it took them only 45 minutes to return. The jury was unanimous in finding him guilty of first-degree murder, but there was no general agreement among the jurors on the verdict. At the sentencing, Diane's mother turned to the perpetrator in tears. She asked how it was possible to kill with one's own hands a man to whom one professed to love. But even these words did not make the criminal repent. Throughout the trial, he showed no emotion and no remorse for what he had done. Even now, as the court was about to pronounce the sentence, he showed no emotion. But much to the disappointment of the prosecution, Mike Jones was sentenced to life in prison without the right to leave the country. Thanks for joining today's crime journey. I'm Diana, your guide in the shadows. Subscribe, hit the bell, and let's keep exploring mysteries together. Stay curious, stay